Greetings, BUSN 1360 Software Apps for Business Students. I'm Dr. McGrory, and today we explore Excel Chapter 4, which is all about formatting Excel worksheets and managing the workbook. So this type of formatting is not changing fonts and font colors or shading cells. This type of formatting is really essential to workbook management. It's moving the worksheets around within our workbook, or maybe adding columns or rows to our worksheet, maybe even hiding columns and rows or hiding a worksheet. So these can be very essential tasks. Now this is another long skill review, so we're going to go through steps 1 through 12 and then stop there and continue on in a second video. So let's go ahead and get started. So on my desktop, I've already created my Excel 4 folder, and I'm going to open that folder, and I've already downloaded my start file and my solution file. Now, I think it's important to look at the solution file. This is opened in Adobe Acrobat Reader, which is a free download. And it looks like I have a spreadsheet that is again dealing with student names and across the top, different weeks of the class. And it looks like it's a Wednesday, Friday class. This is apparently the Excel for Finance Majors class. Excel, very essential to any accounting or finance functions and managerial functions. Across the top, I want you to notice that it shows me the name of the workbook. That can be very handy, especially if that is automated, so that if I'm looking at a printout of this, I know exactly the file that I'm looking for. It tells me the name, perhaps of the student who's turning in the work. And if I can, maybe I can make this smaller so that you can see. I'm holding the Control key down on my keyboard and using my mouse wheel, and that combination will help you zoom in and zoom out. So let me zoom in just a little bit. Towards the bottom of this worksheet, you can see that I have the name of the class and I have the date. Now, today, as I record this video, it is not February 10th, 2025, but perhaps that's when this spreadsheet was created. So that's a good thing to know. That might be very useful information for various reports that you're required to submit on your job. I'm scrolling down to the next page, and it's zoomed in, it's a little larger here. And this one, look how long this page is. It seems that it's actually maybe a lot more columns here, right? Now, do we have the same students? This is Mary Ama. Nope, it's different. So this might be a different class even. So, or different section. So we have the same Wednesday, Friday. We have the student names. Now, I don't see student IDs like we have on the previous page. But look here, it says sign here to indicate attendance. So perhaps this is a sheet that we pass around as an attendance log. So kind of interesting to see what we're working with. And in fact, I think this is actually a third page. So this would be page 2, and this would be page 1. So we have 3 different pages that we're working with. It might be nice. I would recommend that they put page numbers on here. Wouldn't that be great? Okay, so we see what we're working with. Let's close this, and I'm going to go ahead and double click to open. And then while that's up, I'm going to bring Chrome forward. Remember, that's our preferred browser. And I'm going to scroll down here a little bit. This is a case-based course. In other words, we're not just doing spreadsheets to do spreadsheets. We're doing them to solve a problem that business experiences. So it says in this project, you'll be responsible for managing attendance for a 16-week college course with 2 sections. So FIN 103 and 104. Each section requires a different method of attendance tracking. It says for the 103, you'll create a detailed attendance report intended for submission to the admissions office. For 104, you'll set up an attendance log designed as a sign-in sheet where students will manually mark their presence in class. So we saw that sign-in. Your goal is to set up the attendance log for both purposes, ensuring that it's easy to use, accurate, and meets the needs of both students and the administrative staff. Now, I like this second paragraph because it tells us what are the deliverables. And deliverables is a word that we use in business all the time to say what is due to the client, what is due to my boss, what am I responsible for submitting to my team, what are the deliverables. So the deliverable for this project includes two distinct outputs. First, we're going to generate a formal attendance report for 103, as we learned, formatted to meet the needs of the administration for official record keeping. Second, you'll create a printable sign-in sheet designed for students to use during class. Ensure both the report and the sign-in sheet are clear, well organized, and ready for use. So since this is a detailed project, be sure to save your work frequently, and we know we need to do that. Now let's look at all these skills that you learned in your sim book and that you're going to apply here in this Excel spreadsheet. We're going to name worksheets. We're going to change the color of those tabs. So some kind of fun things. We're going to change the width and height of our worksheets. We're going to insert rows. We're going to do, they say, splitting the workbooks so that you can see different parts. If you remember back to Excel Chapter 1, how many columns were there? How many rows were there in Excel? Well, sometimes we need to be able to see something high up in the worksheet at the same time that we see something lower in the worksheet. So splitting the workbook will help us do that. We can hide and unhide rows and columns, set our margins, change the worksheet orientation. If you notice, those were so wide because they print typically landscape, so we'll see that. So let's get started with step 1. We've already opened the workbook. Now we know what we need to do. We need to enable editing. So I'm just going to pull Excel forward and always enable editing because this comes from a trusted source. Let me go back to our instructions, check that off, and on to step number 3. We're going to rename Sheet 1 and change the color of the Sheet tab. So let me pull this up just a little bit. Let me just walk you through this. Let me move these instructions out of the way. So in my workbook, it looks like I have 3 different worksheets. I might even click on each one at a time so I can see how different they are. Looks like 3 is an empty worksheet, 2, and then back to 1. So Sheet 1 is currently the active worksheet. It's highlighted, and I'm going to just double click. When I double click on that tab, you'll notice that the text is selected. They want me to name this Fin, in all caps for finance, 103. Once you finish doing that, press your Enter key. So double clicking on those tabs is just a really easy way to rename a worksheet tab. Now, something you're going to do a lot in this chapter is right click. It's going to be a real time saver, and you're not going to have to remember a lot of these menu options if you just remember to right click. Put your mouse over that tab and right click. Well, first of all, you see that you have all kinds of options to insert, delete, even rename, as we just did, move or copy. But we're coming down to tab color. And the tab color that they want us to pick is one of these dark blue colors. And it's dark blue text too. They say 4th color in the first row of the theme colors. So first row, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's this one. This dark blue text 2. So let me select that. Okay, I selected the tab color, and you may be looking at your tab, as I am at mine, and saying, I don't see any difference. It's still this active white tab. Click on a different tab, like Sheet 2. And at this point, you will see the coloring. So when the tab is active, it will always be kind of highlighted in this white color. And when it's not, it really draws attention. This is a good way to help people see a tab, like if they need to finish one worksheet and then go to another one. It's very handy for that. So I'm going to click back on that Fin 103 tab. Save that. Let's go back to our instructions. We did the right click. We renamed our worksheet. We, of course, pressed enter and we changed the color. On to step 4. Now we're going to make a copy of the Fin 103 worksheet. It does not tell us what to name it, but it does say to put that copy before sheet 2. So what does that mean? Well, let's look at that. Go back to your tab and right-click on top of that Fin 103. So here we saw move or copy, and it's very important to understand this does both. So click on that, and in this little dialog box that you see here, the first thing I want you to do is to check this box to create a copy. Because if you're like me, if I don't do it first, I might forget. And if I forget, I just move it. I don't make a copy. So the default is to move unless you check that box, in which case it'll create a copy. So we are supposed to make this copy or insert this copy, and notice this before sheet 2. So I selected sheet 2. Okay. Now, we cannot have 2 worksheets in the workbook with the exact same name. So Excel will append a little number to the end of it. In this case, it puts inside parentheses this little number 2. You may have noticed when you copy files sometimes, or you save a file with the exact same name, that it will put a little number at the end. So this is kind of common on Windows computers. So, okay, let's save that for right now because I think we have what we need. But maybe, if I go back to the original tab, okay, there it is, and notice it even copied the tab color. But everything is identical. The date, the student names, everything is identical. And here we are on our number 2 tab, and that was the active tab. Let me move these instructions back over here. We did the right click. We moved it before. We definitely created a copy. Like I said, do that step first, because if you're like me, next thing you know, you've moved it rather than made a copy. On to step number 5. Name the new sheet Fin 104, and they're telling us how to do that, and we're going to make its color green accent 6, which is the last color in the first row of theme colors. So let's move that out of the way. I'm going to right click. I told you this is so useful. Right click on the second tab. Well, let's see, I can just go to rename, I guess, or you want to I was here because I was going to change the tab color. So let's do this. I'm going to change the tab color. It said this theme color, and it said it's the very last color. And just to double check, that's green accent 6. So I went ahead and changed the theme color, but I need to rename it. So let's double click. And notice that my mouse turns into an I-beam when it's over that selected text. So I could retype the whole thing, but I'd rather just click and drag, because isn't that what that I-beam means I can do? Click to type or click to edit. That way I just type the number 4 and it replaces the text that I had selected. Press your Enter key to complete that. I'm going to save my work. Remember in the instructions, they said to save frequently. And the question I am frequently asked is, how often should I save? And the response to that is always the same. And you'll find this in your industry as you talk to your IT people or colleagues. How much information can you afford to lose? So if you were to lose your spreadsheet right now for some reason, you would have to repeat all the steps that you've already done. And you would have to remember the steps that you've already done. So it's a good idea to save whenever you are comfortable that you have made a change that you want to accept. So that's a lot of formatting, and that setup took a little bit of time, but it sure does make our tabs readable. We have this formatting and font color. Everything is already set up on this second worksheet. So that's going to be a time saver. So step number 5, we completed. Let me scroll up. On to step number 6. It says group sheets 103 and 104 so that you can apply formatting changes to both sheets at once. Isn't that a time saver? We're talking about formatting and making these look nice, not to make them pretty necessarily, although that's a benefit, but because we need them to convey information quickly. Remember, our goals are to communicate with this. So we're going to group those worksheets, and then now it says any change you make to one worksheet will be made to both. So this, we're just kind of getting set up here, and then we're going to go straight into step number 7, where we resize a column in both worksheets at once to make a best fit. And we can do that by double clicking the border. So I'll show you that. We'll come back to these instructions. But let's begin by grouping the worksheets. How do I group the worksheets? I'm going to start by clicking on the 103 worksheet and making that active. And I want you to remember your control keys and your shift keys and how they assisted you in selecting cells. So while I'm on this Fin 103 worksheet, let me just remind you, I'm just going to kind of come to a blank space right here. If I click a cell, just one cell, and I hold my shift key down and I click another cell, it selects everything from the starting point to the ending point. Click away to deselect that. If I click a cell again, and now I use my control key, I hold it down, as I click, I can pick and choose. Remember, this last cell here is selected even though it's not shaded, but I can pick and choose. In fact, if I realize I made a mistake and I didn't want this one selected, just keep your control key down and click it again. I'm clicking to deselect. These same principles worked in Microsoft Word. They work when you are selecting files in Windows. They work in cells for Microsoft Excel, and they will work on these tabs. So I have my first tab selected. If I hold my shift key down and I click the very last worksheet, do you see that all of these are highlighted now in that white color? They are all selected, which means they are grouped. In fact, if I look up at the top here, do you see that it says group? It sees that I have these grouped. Now I have to be very, very careful when I have these grouped, because whatever I do to one affects all the others. If I delete some information in a cell, it will delete it on all of the others when these are grouped. If I add something, it will add to all the others. Well, right now we're just practicing with selection. So I clicked the first one, I held the shift key down, and I clicked the last one. Now if I just click, see how I just clicked one of the tabs? It deselected that group. Now that's kind of a nice thing to know, but you also want to be really sure that they're not all active. Because remember, if they're grouped, what you do to one affects all the others. Now, alternatively, I could pick the first tab, and I could hold my control key down and I could pick sheet number 2. And in that case, only those 2 tabs are selected, and you see how they are highlighted. Often to deselect that, I will click one of the tabs that is not part of the group. In our instructions for step number 6, they told us to group this first one, so I'm going to make it active. I'm going to hold my shift key down, and I'm going to click the 104. I see they are both highlighted, so they are both selected. Again, verify that the group displays in the title bar, but it's really making sure that you see both of these are highlighted. So let's go back to our instructions, as I promised I would before we go to step 7, but we've completed step 6. So step 7 says resize column A in both worksheets at once to best fit the data by double-clicking the right border of the column heading. Okay, easy enough. On my workbook, they're looking at column A. And when I move my mouse into this area, I have puffy white plus sign. And we've talked about four-sided arrow and, all the different shapes. when I move my mouse on top of the letter A, now pay attention to this, on top of the letter A, do you see that it's a downward pointing arrow? This shape is not the one you want, okay? You'll have that shape even as you move across the column. So it's not the shape that you want, because when I click with this, it selects the entire column. And when I say entire column, didn't we say that there are over 1 million rows? So it selected everything from A1 all the way to the very last row of Excel. Now, if that's what we wanted, that would be great, but that's not what we want. When I move my mouse back up and I get that downward pointing arrow, I want you to keep your mouse up there and slowly move it until it's at the edge between A and B. It's kind of in that little gutter between A and B. And now I have two-sided arrow. And what two-sided arrow means is that if I press, I can manually drag and, expand and shorten that column. Now I'm just putting it back the way it was, because there's a shortcut here that they want us to explore. They said get our mouse in that configuration, and you cannot be timid about this. I see students all the time who have their mouse like this. That's not right. If you have your mouse over here just a little bit off, it's not right. It must be this two-sided arrow. And when I'm in that configuration, double click. What that does is it looks through the column. Look down here to row, in fact, I'm going to scroll up, to row B24. Do you see that that's the longest content, that's the longest value in that cell? And it made the column wide enough to accommodate the longest value in the column. Now, sometimes that's going to be too long, so you might have to manually shorten that. But in this case, it was a real time saver. And we had 2 worksheets selected when we did that. I am currently on F103. You know how I know that? Click the 104. And do you see the bar underneath that? That's what really I need to show you. See how that underscore changes? Now I'm on Fin 104, and this column is the same width. So what I do to one worksheet will apply to the others. What if I type in cell A3, my dog has fleas? You know, that's my fun sentence to type, and I pressed enter. If I go back to Fin 103, there it is. It is on both worksheets, whether they're selected or not. It's on both worksheets. When they are both selected, what I do to one applies to the other. Permanently, if I save it. Okay, I don't want that, so I'm selecting this, and I'm going to press delete, and what I do to one, I was on 104, applies to the other. In fact, you'll notice it's even moving the cell that I have selected is moving on both. So if I do a formula on one, it will apply to the other, and that can be a real time saver. Let's go back to our instructions. We have completed step 7. Let me scroll down. Ooh, look at step 8. This is a long one. For step 8, it says that we are going to add a header and footer to both worksheets at once. So we still have both worksheets selected. So they're having us now apply this header. So it says to switch to the page layout view so that we can easily apply this header. And these are a lot of instructions, so let me just walk you through these. Move these instructions out of the way. So we're in our workbook. We have both worksheets selected, 103 and 104. And towards my status bar, if I move down all the way across, next to display settings, we see the first button here is depressed, and this is our worksheet view. This is what they call normal view. So this is how we're used to normally seeing our worksheet. As we continue across, this next button is the page layout view. When I click this, it's going to show me what this is going to look like when it prints. Now, kind of like in Word, when you saw certain characters did not print, the words add header up here towards the top will not print. If you were to print this, that will not come out on your printout. When I move my mouse into this area, a little different than Microsoft Word, I see three distinct areas in the header. So rather than trying to align like we do in Word, left, center, and right, Excel uses this cell type of approach. And the instructions for our assignment want us to put something in the center. So we just click one time in the center part of this header. And they want us to add the file name. But if we type it, there's a problem. Because when we type it, we might save this workbook under a different name. We might, every time we revise it, we might say this is Rev A, Rev B, or maybe we even put the year and the date on there so that we know which one is most current. And then our document would not display the correct file name if we type it. So we don't want to type it. We want Excel to automatically insert it. And if you notice, when I clicked in this header, I got a new ribbon, header and footer, and this new ribbon has these cool buttons. Look at this, header and footer elements, page number, number of pages, current date and time, the file path. In other words, where did you save it? Isn't that great information? The next button over here, file name. So I'm going to click that. And when I look in the header, this is the code that Excel uses, and it means to Excel, hey, go ahead and display the file name. So you've learned about formulas, and formulas start with an equal sign, and how to type in cell names and absolute references, and even how to put the worksheet in there with the bang symbol. Well, now you're learning the code for the header. These codes always start with that ampersand, and then they have square brackets and a keyword inside. And you can type these. There's nothing magical about Excel inserting that. You can type these if you want. But instead of ampersand file, your actual file name will display. Now they're not done yet. They want us to click in this right side. And in the right side, it's really difficult to see, but my cursor is flashing right up against the edge of that right box. So it says in the right section of the header, type your own name. Well, my pretend student is Jill Doe. So I'm typing that. You would type your name. So now they want us to go to the footer. And an easy way to do that is you have a convenient button here. Notice it's go to header, go to footer. Now I'm in the footer. And in the center section, once again, they want us to type the sheet name, the worksheet name. And so up here, that's one of our buttons. It's the next button over. So once again, we see we have that ampersand, and this time the word is tab inside of square brackets because that's shorter than typing worksheet. So tab means the name of the tab. They want us to do one more thing. Again, we're going to click in this right. So I had to click a couple times. And I see my cursor flashing there. And they want us to insert the current date. Well, once again, we have this great little button up here on our ribbon. And so now you know the keyword for that. And if it's more convenient for you to remember the keyword and just type that, sometimes that's the fastest way. So we have that. I'm done with this. And so what I'm going to do is kind of like with Microsoft Word, I'm just going to click, in fact, I double-clicked inside the document so that I've selected a cell. That closes the header and the footer. And now I see that information. In fact, let me scroll up. I see the information, and it's on every page of my document as I go across there. Right now I have many pages to my Excel spreadsheet. So that is going to update automatically even if I was to save this with a different name. So we're finished with our page layout view. Make sure you click in some cell. And so that really ensures that your worksheet is active. So if you've been scrolling around like me, it may make things inactive, or if you've clicked back in the header. So make sure you have selected a cell. With a cell selected, if you go back down to your status bar, remember our buttons here, and this first button is called Normal, because that's normally how we view a spreadsheet. As we return to this view, you have certainly noticed that you see something new, which is some dotted lines going down the spreadsheet. These dotted lines don't appear until you go into some kind of print preview mode, such as page layout, or you print preview, or you actually print your document. And so they'll display for a little while, and then sometimes they'll go away. What are they telling me? They're telling me that this is where the paper ends. And remember, we had our spreadsheet set to print in a portrait mode. In other words, where it's taller rather than wider. And spreadsheets can often be very wide, which is why they're often in that landscape mode. But ours was in portrait mode. Well, how many columns is a common question, will fit on a portrait 8.5 by 11? It depends. Column C in this case is very wide, so it takes up a lot of space. As we continue across, columns D through N are much more narrow, and so several of those columns, they all fit on one page. So it really depends on the formatting of your workbook. But we're going to keep learning how to make adjustments and how to format our worksheets and manage our workbook. Save this because we've done a lot of work. Bring those instructions back over. And step 8 was long, but that was a lot of fun, wasn't it, to learn about these file, how you can display that code and the headers and the footer and how to access that. Put the current date up there. Move this up on to step 9. It says ungroup. Very important step. Ungroup those worksheets. Verify that the same formatting was applied to both sheets and that they are now ungrouped. So let's just really focus on that. So I see they are still grouped. It says grouped up here in the title bar. Down below, both tabs of my worksheet are highlighted. So I want to, as I changed between these two, did you notice that they stayed grouped? They remained grouped. So click on a tab that is not part of the group. And you will see that that makes them ungroup. What if that didn't happen? If I'm going to select these again, 103, I'm holding my Shift key down and I'm selecting 104. I told you right-click is such a key resource for this chapter and for these functions. If I right-click on either of the grouped worksheets, do you see at the very bottom I have an option to ungroup? So that will also work. So they wanted us to verify that for each worksheet, this is 103, that we have headers. So 103 is selected. Let me go to my page layout view, and my header is there, and as I scroll down, my footer is there. Now let me go to 104, and you notice it's back to its normal view. Well, let me change to page layout view. My header is there, and my footer is there. So I don't see these unless I'm in a print preview or a page layout mode. Let's go back to normal view, because this allows me to concentrate on the content, on the data itself. Let me go back to 103 and again change that to normal view. And I'm just going to scroll up so we can see that. Save that. Let's go back to these instructions. That was step 9. On to step 10. Well, we remember themes. We worked with those in Microsoft Word. Well, we can apply those same types of themes to our worksheets so that if we're preparing a report, everything looks very consistent. So on the page layout tab, we're going to go to themes, and in the themes gallery, remember that retrospect, that's the theme that we're going to apply again. So let me move the instructions out of the way, and page layout tab, and over here, Themes, and here is Retrospect, and as I hover over it, you can already see things changing in the background. You see the colors and the fonts kind of changing. So I'm going to select Retrospect. There it is. Now, did we apply that theme to the worksheet or the workbook? Now, they're not grouped. They were not grouped when we applied that theme. In fact, just to verify, I'm on Fin 103, and I go to Themes. If I apply a different theme, Slice. Ooh, that one's bright. It applied to both. So I'm going to go back to Retrospect, because what we're seeing is that these themes apply to the workbook. So these two worksheets were not grouped. I applied the Retrospect theme to only one of the worksheets, and it applied to both of these. Did it apply to the entire book? Well, when I go over to Sheet 2, it doesn't look like it has a theme applied. I guess I could click on this drop-down box and I can see that this is selected. One reason that it looks, and I'm just clicking away someplace, or you can press Escape on your keyboard, one reason it doesn't look like there's a theme applied is because in this really basic sheet number 2, there's no headers or styles applied. On our Fin 104, you can kind of tell this Excel for finance majors that this has a cell style and that these are apparently cell styles. So it was able to say I need to change the theme for these styles. Remember in Microsoft Word we saw that headings changed with different style choices. So you should see that change. Let's go back to our instructions, and that was step 10. On to step 11, and it says select the 103 sheet. It can be difficult to work with such a wide worksheet. As you scroll to the right to see the end of the semester, you can no longer see the student names. To make it easier to work, you will split the screen into 2 views of different parts of the worksheet. And they're telling us where to make that split. We're going to click cell D1, and then we're going to split this. So I'm going to move this away. And I've selected 103. And just to demonstrate, so I see my student names, but now let's say we're in week 16. So I'm going to use my scroll bar to move across. And when I'm over here, first of all, they went from week 16 to week 20, didn't they? I don't see the student names. So if I am someplace down here on row 20, it might be very difficult for me to remember, okay, which student was that? And I might record an error, put the wrong grade with the wrong student. So I don't want to do that. Let's go back over. I'm scrolling back over to the left. And let's click in cell D1. D1, that's where it says Excel for finance majors. And they want us to go up here to the View tab. We're changing the way we view the data. We're looking in this Windows group. Lots of cool things that we use frequently in this group. And split. Now, I've got cell D1 selected. I press split. And now there's an extra gray bar that was inserted before cell D1. So if I press, see how when I put my mouse over it, it changes shapes into a double-sided arrow. And that means now I can drag that. So I could drag it over a little bit, or I could leave it. I could put it back over. It was right at the page end. But down at the bottom of my screen, my scroll bar has been split in half. I can, if I want, scroll within this window to the left. I'm scrolling back, but of course I want to see the student names. I could even tightly align this so that I really see just the student names. Then on my scroll bar over on the right side, I can scroll. Now, if you get into this situation where the scroll bar is at the end, but I want to work in week 20, And I need week 20 to be much closer to the student names. I want you to come down to your scroll bar and use the arrow key instead. So the more I click on that arrow, it will keep that worksheet moving, this particular window. So I could have week 20 directly next to the student names. How nice is that? So remember, we went to View, and then in this window group, Split. Now we're going to get rid of that, so I'm just going to click the Split button again, and it returns us to what we were used to. I'm going to click over here just so that I know where I'm at. That was step 11. We really didn't make any changes, but we did explore a view. So on to step 12. We're going to insert a new row to add a new student to the list. And we're going to right-click on the row heading for the row number 9. And then we're going to select Insert. So right-clicking once again, we're going to use the Insert, but they're telling us to right-click on row number 9. Format is same below. Okay, so here's the student data. Let's move this out of the way. And I'm going to row number 9. Now again, don't be timid. When you move your mouse onto this, you've got to put it not in the cell. You go off, just like you did with the columns, go all the way on top of the row number. So when you put your mouse and you get that arrow, just that single pointing dark black arrow, right click. This tells you what you can do to the row, or if we had done this to a column, to the column. So here I can insert. I'm going to select that, but look at it. I can change the row height. I can hide the row. Do you see that I can unhide the row? I'm clicking insert. And what did it do? It took the data that was there. Let me Ctrl Z. You see Amaya, it's Brick Amaya. So I didn't lose Brick Amaya. It moved all the data down. Now the important thing to remember, how many columns are there in Excel? Since I am doing this to the row, it is moving all the data from here to what was the last column, XFD, all the way across. So right click, insert. Now, you might see this little format paintbrush here. And this is a two-part button. There's a little bitty drop-down arrow there. And it gives me some choices about how this row should be formatted. By default, it typically takes the formatting from the row above. And what that means is as we start to type, we're going to see that whatever we type in there is going to be bolded because the title, student name, is bolded and the student ID is bolded. Well, we don't want it to get its formatting from above. We want it to get its formatting from below. So just click on that. And there you go. Now they wanted us to add the new name, Abrams, comma, Dryzana. And the student number is 267854. And I'm just tabbing to get out. Well, I see a little green arrow, which could indicate a green corner, which could indicate I have a problem. When I click in that cell, I see my caution sign, and when I hover over it, it says the number in this cell is formatted as text or preceded by an apostrophe. Now, we don't see an apostrophe, but that is one way that you can tell Excel this is text. Now, this is probably formatted as text because the columns below. Let's see if I go to Home. Look at this. If I go to my Home tab and I've just clicked any other cell, look at the formatting up here. It is set to text. Why would we set numbers to text? We are never going to do math with these numbers. And oftentimes with something like a student ID number, it might begin with a 0. And if it begins with a 0, we may want that to display as we would any text. Okay? But when numbers are not used as numbers, in this case it's an ID, it's an identification, then oftentimes they are formatted as text. So let's save that. We learned a lot with that step. and that was step 12. So because we have many steps to go, this is kind of a long one. If I go down here to, 26 steps total and 23, and you can see these steps can be a little long in some cases. So let's stop the video here and I'll return to where we'll pick up at step 13. Thanks, folks. Follow me in the next video.